So I'm back with another video. In this video, I'm going to be reviewing the last book I read, Fledgling by Octavia Butler. And Octavia Butler is one of my favorite authors, so stay tuned to hear all my thoughts and opinions on this book. Okay, if I had to describe this book in one word, that word would be disturbing. Okay, and I'll get into why that's the word that I chose for this book. And I would rate this book a 3.5 stars out of 5, or 3 stars. It's leaning closer to 3, but I'm giving it a 3.5, because usually if I rate a book a 3, is like I barely got through it. And so a 4 is pretty high. A 5, I saw nothing wrong with it. So this one is a 3.5. And so the reason I gave this a 3.5 is because it was a great story. It was a really good story, but it was disturbing. I mean, I don't even know where to begin, but let's just start at the beginning. I'll go ahead and read the back. So Shori is a mystery, seemingly a young girl. She wakes up alone in the woods with critical wounds and traumatic amnesia, only to learn she is actually a 53-year-old vampire, the lost child of an ancient species that is driven by blood and lives in dark symbiosis with humanity. Genetically modified to be able to walk in daylight, Shori must use her rare gift to uncover whatever she can about her old life and figure out who wants to destroy her and the rest of her kind. Okay. So Shori has amnesia, and it's like complete. Like, she doesn't even remember what things are. Her name, her family, she doesn't know anything. But she appears to be like a 10-year-old little black girl. Okay. And I think one of the characters in the story described her as a little elfin girl. So saying that she looks like a little elf. But she's actually a 53-year-old vampire. And we learn all this in the most sickening way possible, okay? So there are things that I liked about this book, and there are things that I didn't like, and there are things that, I don't even know. Like, okay, I don't... Some things I was like, what? Okay. So anyways, so basically how we learn that Shori is a 53-year-old vampire stuck in a 10-year-old girl's body. She's like walking down the street, and a guy picks her up, and he's like trying to help her, and he says, you can't be more than 10, 11, or 12. And so it's not until later that we find out that she's 53 years old. So you're probably wondering what's the sickening part. We're gonna get to that. So I like the story itself. It was a good story. The vampire aspect was really cool. The way the vampires fed was interesting. And this book could have been an erotic vampire story if it wasn't for everything else. Okay, so there is a little science fiction. It is a science fiction book, pretty much. If OB would have left out the science fiction, she could have just totally went straight vampire erotica with this book, but she didn't. I didn't like the bland dialogue. So let's talk about things that I liked and didn't like. So let's talk about what I didn't like. I didn't like the bland dialogue. None of the characters had humor. The conversations didn't build relationships. Like, oh, now I see why they like each other. They have this funny interaction or whatever. Everything was just exchanging information and knowing everything. So all the characters always knew too much or had too much insight. I felt like no one made mistakes. And no one learned anything except Shori, who had to learn everything But even though she had amnesia and she was like, appears to be a kid, she was already competent. I mean, she just pretty much in this book learned the vampire law. And I've noticed with Octavia Butler novels that her characters can be kind of one-dimensional. They can be flat, which is a strange thing because her books are not really flat, but her characters, like, they just kind of don't seem like real people. Like, I don't know. I mean, she's one of my favorite authors, but, you know, like, none of the characters are funny. None of them have like a quirk. None of, you know, they're just like very, did you do this because you didn't want me to get hurt? Yes, and I knew you would follow me. And it's like, and there's no even reason why they care about each other so much. So what was really interesting about this story, and I heard that this might be true for Vampire Diaries as well, is that when the vampires in this story feed from humans, the humans get pleasure from it. And also, when they feed from humans, the humans get addicted to them. And, you know, this is truly a science fiction novel, because in the novel, the vampires have venom, and whatever's in their venom or saliva gets into the human system and it makes them addicted to them. And whatever's in the saliva and the venom also prolongs the humans' lives. So they are like bound to each other, and the humans even get a scent. They develop the scent of the vampire so that other vampires won't try to feed from them. So I thought that part of it was really cool. It's not like the vampires hunting people down at night. Like, these vampires only feed from their symbionts or the people that they've bound to them and gotten addicted to their venom. Okay. So I thought that was pretty cool. So let's talk about how we found out about her being a 53-year-old vampire stuck in a 10-year-old girl's body. So Shuri, who doesn't know her name at this time, is walking down the street, and she's picked up by a guy whose name is Wright, and he is trying to help her. He's like, I'm going to take you to the hospital. She's like, I don't know what a hospital is, but I don't think I want to go to a hospital. All right, well, I'm going to take you to the police station. I don't know anything about the police, but I think that's definitely worse than the hospital. So she tries to jump out of the car, and he stops her, and then she ends up biting his hand and licking the blood off. And for some reason, he likes this, and he decides to take her home and keep her with him, right? So he basically like lives in a trailer behind his aunt and uncle's house, and so he takes her there, and like, she's like, you know, I think he like takes off her shirt, and he's like, oh, so sad, no breast. And she's like, I don't know why he feels that way, whatever. But like, she's like, you know, if you want to have sex with me, that's not bad. So he does. And I'm sorry, even though on the back it says she's supposed to be a 53-year-old vampire, but come on, he doesn't know. Only thing he knows, and I'm sure Wright is white, and sure he's this little skinny black girl with like she has like balding patches in her head, because when she woke up, like half of her skull was smushed in. So that's just disturbing. So Shuri ends up drinking his blood or whatever, and he's like, oh, you must be a vampire. You should look up everything on the internet about vampires. She's like, okay, I'm a vampire. She's like, but I don't think I'm as young as you think I am. He's like, yeah, you're probably not. My mind's telling me no. His mind probably was telling him no, but his body was, for whatever reason, telling him to sleep with a little skinny girl with patches in her head who drinks blood. Yeah. So I guess if you haven't read this book, basically only listen to this if you read this book. It's a lot to explain, okay? But you read the back, okay? How did she get amnesia? How did she wake up and start walking down the street? Okay, she woke up in a cave. Do I get into this in my blurb? Let me just stick to my notes. Okay. So anyways, so this story reminded me of the Lilith's Brood series, or the Exogenesis, whatever it's called, where the main character Lilith is captured by aliens, and the aliens captured all the humans, okay? Because Earth was like, had like self-destructed, like the people, I don't know. I can't remember everything about the book, okay? But whatever. The aliens came, they saved the humans and put them on their mothership, baby. And you know, they pretty much coerced them into, the aliens coerced the humans into mating with them to create hybrid human alien things. This is another book by Octavia Butler. Which is what Shuri is. She's a vampire mixed with human. Okay, that's what we say, genetically modified to walk in the daylight. So basically, she was mixed with, they kind of mixed her genes or another vampire people's genes with a black human, so that Shuri would have dark skin and she'd be able to walk in the sun, because that's, you know. And also, since she's like has human in her, she can stay awake during the daytime. Also, the vampires need humans to survive because they need their blood. The aliens in Lilith's brood need other species to mate with in order to survive. The vampires and humans became bound, and I've noticed that with other Octavia Butler book novels, like her characters are just like strictly there for, you know, like they are not, I don't know, maybe because it's science fiction. I mean, this is pretty much the only science fiction author I read, so maybe that's just like a thing in science fiction. I don't know. I just think if she would have went with like a vampire sex cult type of book and left out the kid, that would have been a pretty decent book, because they really did live in communities, and all of them let this vampire feed off of them, and a lot of them had sex with the vampire that was drinking their blood. So, you know, whatever. So this book, actually, I think this is probably, you know, one of her later books. It says that it was published or in 2005, and she died in 2006. So maybe this was her last book. I don't know. But this book reminded me of a lot of other Octavia Butler books. She has a series, Lilith's Brood, or the Exogenesis or something series. I think the first book, I think it's like Imago, Adulthood Rites, and I can't remember the first one. Dawn. So maybe the main character in that story is Dawn. I don't know. I have to look it up. So anyways, but I remember most of the story. So this book reminds me of the Lilith's Brood series, because the main character is captured by aliens, Dawn or Lilith, whatever her name is. But okay, so all humans are captured by aliens when they like destroy the earth, and the aliens come to save them. And these aliens pretty much coerce the humans into mating with them and creating this new hybrid alien human thing, species, whatever. You know, it's like it's them but born from a human with human DNA. We'll get into all that later. And that's pretty much the same thing here, because Shuri is a human genetically modified, no, she's a vampire genetically modified with human genes. And it was a black human that she had a black human mother, and that's how she got dark skin, so that she'd be able to walk in the daytime or be exposed to the sun without burning, and human so that she can be awake in the daytime, because Shuri can be awake in the daytime. The other vampires are like dead asleep. Like you cannot even wake them up in the daytime. Like they cannot even be aroused. So that was one thing that was similar in those two books. The vampires need the humans to survive, and the aliens and Lilith's brood need other species to keep reproducing. So they can't just reproduce with themselves, but how they keep evolving is to keep getting genetic material from other species. It's a really good series. Read it. It's great. The vampires and humans become, bound to each other because the humans are providing them blood, and the vampires rely on the humans for the blood, and the humans get addicted to the venom. Just like the vampires and the humans are bound to each other and the humans smell like the vampire, it's the same with the alien things. So these aliens usually mate in threes. So they'll have like a man, a woman, or a female and a male alien, and then one that doesn't have a sex. It's called a something. I can't remember. And this thing brings the male. So the aliens have a female and a male, and then they have this thing that's neither female nor male, and they all they have these tentacles. Or that's not important, but basically this thing right here takes the genes from these two things, and they come together and mix them, and that's how they get a baby. But the female thing carries the baby, so he mixes it up, puts it in the female. That's true. That's how it works in the story. This is a theme that's in both of these books. You see, you saw those alien things, right? So when the aliens capture the humans, they take a human woman and a human man, or a human female and a human male, and then the same alien thing, right? And they can also have alien male and females. Oh my goodness. Anyways, and they mate like that and produce an alien human baby, and the human woman could carry that alien human baby, and the baby may come out looking human, but it may evolve and look more like a alien. What's similar about that is just the way the vampires give the humans a smell. The aliens, once they start mating with humans, the humans can't mate together anymore. Like they are repulsed by each other's smell, and or just they can't even touch anymore. Even though they're still in a relationship, they just can't mate without that thing, right? And the aliens also cut off human reproduction unless they reproduce with aliens, because they felt like humans couldn't be trusted. But that's a whole nother thing. So that's, you see how that came? You see how that's the same? Okay. Text is text connections. All right. Okay. So we got past the alien sex. A difference is the aliens made it to where the humans couldn't mate. Yeah, so I just said that the aliens made it to where the humans couldn't mate with each other, but vampires still let their humans mate and have regular human kids. Also, the vampires are a different species and they can't reproduce with humans, but the aliens were very they could do it, because you have to read the book to find out how they could do that. Okay. Another similarity was the sex. The aliens had tentacles. Jesus Christ, this didn't seem as weird when I was writing it as it is while I'm saying it. Anyways, I'm just gonna say it. The aliens had tentacles that they would attach to the humans, and I think it was on the back of the neck, to create a simulation, or to have sex with. Okay, anyways, they had tentacles that they would attach to the humans to have sex with them. And even one alien could attach to two humans and make it seem like those two humans were having sex with each other for like an intergalactic threesome. I don't know. And the vampires created some kind of ecstasy or pleasure when they fed off of humans. So it wasn't horror vampires killing and turning people. You can't even, in this book, you can't even turn somebody into a vampire from biting them. You can just kill them by drinking all their blood. I guess that's not really in the book. But by becoming them taking on the human as a symbiote, it prolongs their life. And that's the same with the aliens. By the humans mating with the aliens, it prolonged their life. This book also reminded me of Wild Seed, which was the first Octavia book I ever read. Mind-blowing emoji. And Wild Seed is pretty much where this guy created a whole community and people with like special talents or whatever, and he needed to take over their bodies to survive. So he didn't have his own body. So in order to survive, he would take over other people's bodies. They had like one lady who was a shapeshifter and stuff like that. So that's how they were. And just like the vampires create communities of people to feed from, Wild Seed had a lot of he had communities so that he could develop their skills or whatever, and so that he could have bodies to take over so he could stay alive. And just the vampires had these communities and they were having sex with all these people, and in Wild Seed, those communities, these people were having sex with each other. And even in Wild Seed, some of it was non-consensual between the two main characters. One time she mentioned that he made her turn into a... Read that book, okay? Because I don't feel like I should... Yeah, read it on your own time, okay? I'm not going to repeat that. Now, something I questioned with this book was, number one, the dialogue. I just wanted the characters to be developed in real people and not just words, which I felt like they were. Just words on the paper. I couldn't really see them as real people in the real world because they just seemed too flat. And the ease with which the vampires took over the humans just seemed too easy, and it gave no room to see how the relationship could be real and not just drug induced. Also, why didn't Wright really wrestle with the idea of Shori looking only 10 years old? Like, she just bit his hand, licked it, and all he said was, "It feels good." Like, and immediately he's a pedophile. Like, I mean, yesterday this dude wasn't a pedophile, and now all of a sudden, does the venom take effect that fast? Like, so that was another thing. In the story, Shori was drinking blood from a lady for like weeks, and the lady wasn't bound to her yet. The lady could still leave, but after one lick, Wright is a pedophile. Like, I just wish he would have wrestled with that, and it would have been a real thing. He did wrestle with it, but only a little bit, and I think it should have been a real thing of maybe the drugs taking effect over time, not the same night. Come on. And even though Shori turned out to be 53 years old, which was older than Wright, she was still a vampire, and to the vampire, she was still a child. That's why she looked like a child. So, yeah, I think that she could have spent a little more time on showing how maybe the venom and the whatever works, and not just have it work instantly I think she bit his hand from that and turned this guy into a pedophile. Another thing that kind of bothered me was the use of elder fathers and younger sons instead of like grandparents and aunts and uncles. The elder thing was too hard to follow, so I just gave it up and just said, okay, this is her elder father. I don't know how this person's related to her, but whatever. It could have been her grandpa. It could have been her great uncle. Who knows? And this made it even more disturbing. Shori was displayed as like a small, elf-like person, not even 5 feet tall. And her symbionts picking her up and all this kind of stuff just made it more disturbing. It was like, I don't really see the point. I mean, I was trying to understand the point of making Shori a kid. She could have been like still like 18, 19, 22 or something, or appearing to be that old, and wrestling with that. I don't know why she had to be a child. And I haven't listened to any other commentary on this story, so maybe once I do, I'll have more insight into why Octavia Butler made her appear as a child. Now, if you look at the back of this, one of the what do you call these, reviews or ravings about the story, it goes, a startlingly original story about race, family, and free will. Which it is. This is about race, family, and free will, because race, Shori is black, and the reason that the reason she got her predicament was because some other vampires burned her family for doing the genetic modifying on her and making her black and making her human. So, and then family, because she's trying to find her family and she's trying to create a new family. And then free will, because the symbionts pretty much lose their free will. But at first I didn't understand what it had to do with the race, but then I saw how race played into it. But it was kind of odd, because why would vampires care about race in their different species? But all the vampires were white, so I can kind of see that. But I don't know why they care so much about race when it really wouldn't matter. Shori's still a vampire, and now they have the ability to stay awake and walk in the daytime. Even their children would have the ability due to the research from Shori's family. But whatever, I guess. I don't know. I don't know why race was mattering to vampires. But I guess maybe you have to be a racist to understand. I don't know. And the fact that Shori was human bothered them, because some of the vampires look down on humans. And so, that all played into it. Like, what really is a vampire? I also wonder, what was the purpose of Shori having amnesia? Like, why couldn't she go through this whole process without having amnesia? Like, just knowing that somebody attacked her family, and now she has to find out who did it and avenge her family. But she doesn't even know what happened to them, and she has no feelings for them. She can't even mourn them because she doesn't remember them. The only thing I can come up with was to like kind of represent the black diaspora. Whose way of life was pretty much wiped from them. Their people, their language, their culture, their everything, who they were, was taken away from them. So pretty much their family, their free will, everything. And Shori kind of represents that, because she knows nothing about who she is, and she has to learn it again. Just like if you choose to learn about, if you're black and you choose to learn about where you were brought from, that's something you'd have to research and learn, because it was taken away from them. There's no way to know like what tribe you came from, what country, and things like that. If you came, through the transatlantic slave trade or whatever. So in conclusion, I think that this book should have just been 50 Shades of Grey for vampires, and left all the pedophilia out of it. Left the pedophilia, the murdering, all of that out, and just made it 50 Shades of Grey for vampires. And there is a lot to get into in this book. There's genocide, brainwashing, politics, the legal system, murder of innocents. But before I dive into all that and wreck my brain, I'm going to listen to other commentary to bounce my thoughts off of. So leave a comment and let me know if you have read this book and your thoughts on it. And if you've read any other Octavia Butler books and what you thought about it, if you saw the connections between those books as well. My sponsor is asleep, so as she would say, please like and subscribe to our channel.